What is exactly the difference between a regular stamp and duck stamps?
Well, duck stamps are specific. In 1934, President Roosevelt initiated the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, which protects migratory birds in North America. With that, also, you had a lot of hunters that were unmanaged. They wanted to manage hunters, and so they formed the duck stamp, where artists would compete, as we see today. Artists would compete, and Fish and Wildlife would sell that stamp, and the majority of the proceeds would go to conservation. So the difference is, you can have on your mail, you can have whatever, but you don't usually put a federal duck stamp because they're very valuable. Again, dating back to 1934, and there are people that come to this event that have every year, and they're very, very valuable.
The San Bernardino County Museum in Redlands, California, hosts its annual tribute to duck stamps, highlighting past and present winners of this prestigious national competition.
The museum has had the federal duck stamp program for 33 years. That comes in November, roughly the third week in November. And the federal duck stamps is probably one of the more, I'll just say it's the best conservation program in the world. It's raised about $700 million and conserved about 5 million acres of habitat. What a federal duck stamp is when you're a hunter and you're older than 16, you have to get a hunting license and get a federal duck stamp to hunt ducks. But also, people collect them, conservationists use them because it is the most important conservation program. It basically keeps and enhances habitat throughout North America that not only ducks use, but all different types of wildlife, and then we also recreate in those areas. So hikers, hunters, bird watchers, just the average person does benefit from the duck stamps and can use the duck stamps for reduced entry into certain state and federal areas, refuges, wildlife refuges, and so on. So this weekend we are celebrating that. Not only the federal duck stamps, we have one former winner. So the winner for the 2013 federal duck stamps is Adam Grimm, and he's from South Dakota. Also, he brought along his daughter, who is 7, who won the junior duck stamp, which is incredible to me. We also have Robert Steiner, who's a former winner, multiple winner of the federal duck stamps, and he is in our building today, showing his art, selling his art. And also we have Dennis Schroeder, who is a carver. He carves ducks, shorebirds, and birds. Actually, he's a master carver known worldwide. So it's a great event, and we have educational programs for the children from 2 years old to 200 years old.
The San Bernardino County Museum is the perfect place to play host to this special event. Its 2 halls maintain one of the world's largest collections of mounted bird specimens, comprising both resident and migratory species. And among the guests at this year's event is a respected veteran of the duck stamp competition, San Francisco artist Robert Steiner, a past winner whose engaging works encompass the mood of the annual duck season ritual.
Well, I've been honored to win 82 state duck stamp competitions and 2 federal duck stamp competitions as well, which is the most of any artist in the country. So I've been pretty blessed.
I imagine that's why I'm looking at all of these ducks, right?
Exactly. Ducks are us. But hundreds of artists compete from all over the country and to get their painting selected to be on the stamp, and I've been honored to win the most.
So there is a California versus a federal winner, right?
Correct. When you go duck hunting in California, you have to have a state stamp and a federal stamp on your hunting license, and both raise money for wetlands preservation.
How are they displayed here?
Well, I have two original paintings, but I have a lot of my prints displayed, and most of the prints have an image of the painting and the stamp itself and a commemorative medallion, which are minted like U.S. coins. The first medallions were minted on the 50th anniversary of the federal duck stamp, and since then each year each state and the federal government have minted medallions as well to go with the stamps, and some of the prints have remarks or little original paintings that I've done on the lower margin of the print.
I understand that we have some high-profile signatures on some of these stamps.
Yes, many of the states have a governor's edition of prints where the governor of the state will sign some of the prints and stamps to raise additional funds for wetlands. And right here I have some prints signed by Governor Schwarzenegger and Davis and Governor Palin from Alaska.
Among the duck stamp art are the sculpted works of a master carver whose three-dimensional art adds a unique perspective to the afternoon festivities.
Well, they like to have a three-dimensional sculptor judging the stamp because it helps them in determining the anatomical aspects of the duck thing. There's been times when the flat artist may or may not get something right in the anatomy, where the sculptor, when you make it three-dimensionally, you kind of have a tendency to get more of that stuff, not anatomically correct, but looking for different things at any rate.
You don't want an artist who's never seen a duck before, right?
That's right, yeah. There's been one incident I remember in the federal duck stamp thing where an artist depicted a pinioned bird, which was a captive bird that they had cut one side of the wings off so it couldn't fly. And the judges didn't catch that. Where a carver, they know that they have to have two sets of primary feathers. So it's that type of thing that's helpful.
Now, you carve ducks, I believe, because I'm looking at one here that you're working on. Show me what you're doing. In fact, maybe you could even start chopping away or whatever the terminology would be.
Yeah. All right, this one's going to be a green-winged teal, which is one of our smallest North American ducks. And I'm at the end of the carving process right now. I've done the head and some of the bill work already, just so that I don't make quite so big a mess here. And now I'm working on the back end of the bird, which is where the primaries are located, and these long feathers back here are part of the wings also. And I just start using reference photos, such as these here, and that lets you know how many feathers are in that group and where they're located in relation to the overall bird. And just so that you get the profile correct, so that it looks like the bird's sitting, and when they're judged on the water as a floating decoy. So,
Boy, detail is certainly the key word here, isn't it?
Detail is, yes, but it also has to project anatomically correct on the water. If these things are judged as a decoy, they put them into a tank of water, and it has to float lifelike, where puddle ducks tend to float with the tail up in the air, and diver ducks tend to float with the tail down more. So you have to project that for each species.
I suppose you could test it in your bathtub.
You could, yeah. I use an old aquarium, just anything that'll hold water. I've been doing this for 28 years, I think, something like that. I started in the middle 80s.
That's a lot of years of ducks.
It is, and I'm starting to spread out now on things other than ducks. But the first 20 years I spent making almost all waterfowl.
On display are present and past duck stamp entries, as well as the work of this year's winner, South Dakota artist Adam Grimm.
I love doing wildlife art. I've grown up observing wildlife and from a very early age, and that was where the passion really came from to do this sort of art. But I've always enjoyed drawing and painting, and it just seemed like it was just a matter of time before those two kind of merged together.
What drew you to the ducks?
Actually, birders might appreciate it, but I saw a bird I didn't know, and I was trying to find out what this bird was. And so I was going through this book, flipping through, trying to look for that bird, and I couldn't find it. And to this day, I don't know what it was. And I still remember the bird, and I don't know. But in the process, I was seeing all these other birds that were in our area, and these beautiful duck species, wood ducks and green-winged teal and pintails, and I'm like, I've never seen any of these birds, and I'm outside all the time. And that was where I really started to get that interest, like, I really want to see these birds. Where are these at? And my dad said, well, I think out in some marshes, around here maybe that you'd see some. And so we went on this little road trip around our area and actually went out duck hunting and stuff, and found out about that and got to see a lot of these species firsthand. And that was where they just blew me away. The way that their colors and markings, I just decided, like, from then on, that was what I really wanted to paint.
This year's contest was a double victory for artist Adam Grimm, as his 7-year-old daughter, Madison, collected the prize in the Junior Duck Stamp Competition. What have you been drawing for us?
Mostly ducks. Sometimes I do other little animals, like I doodle them and stuff. Yeah.
How long did it take you to draw those?
Well, the mallard head over there, that took me about 4 days to complete.
4 days only?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good. How about the other? And
I worked like 5 hours a day on the mallard.
Oh, well, you had a good work day. What about the other one? What kind of duck is that?
It is a canvasback. It took me on and off for a year to complete.
Now, why did it take you a year for that and a lot less for the other?
Well, I did oil paints for the canvasback. Oil paints usually take me longer, and yeah. And I did the mallard head because they didn't believe that I had won. And I had to lay to disbelief that they didn't believe I actually painted my winning entry.
Tell me, does winning inspire you to do more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of. It makes me feel like, wow, I think I could make like a living out of this.
Yeah, you've found your little niche in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She worked extremely hard on her painting, and she's continuing to work hard, and she's been selling prints. And I thought maybe one day, way in the future, she might want to do something like this because she's always loved to draw and paint. But I never dreamed that she would have this success this early on.
Even with the honor and prestige of completing one of the winning duck stamp entries, the main benefactors of this respected competition are the ducks themselves, with nearly all of the proceeds going to benefit wetlands restoration.
In the 17 to 1800s, we had about 250 million acres of wetlands. Today, about 90 million. Seems like a lot, but really when you start looking at it, it's not, because we're looking at North America from the Canadian Arctic all the way down to the Mexican border. And I would say, and basically I'm saying 50%, probably 70 to 80% of the wetlands, the natural wetlands in North America are gone through flood control, through development, just through draining for agricultural purposes. So federal duck stamp program is trying to build them back up and maintain them, because to maintain bird and wildlife populations, you need a food resource, and a resting resource, and wetlands provide that, and also nesting, a very important natural commodity, if you will.
Did you have to go somewhere to receive your award, or how did that work?
Well, we went to a place further from our house, and maybe it was about an hour or so away. And we went there, and they had me give a little like speech type thing, and they showed my picture and everything on this big like TV almost thing. Yeah, and I had lunch there with everyone.
How did you feel about that at that time?
Well, I was excited that I had won,
Yeah.
and I did the same thing for when I won the South Dakota.
Is this going to be the start of a career for you?
I would like to be a biologist when I'm older, but yeah.
Well, you're learning about the biology of ducks right now.